Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. As always, here with my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. We're recording this a little bit different, Steve. We're recording this on a Wednesday night in the States. What are we, 4 days in? Because the tournament starts on a Sunday. So we're 4 days in, plenty to talk about. Why don't we start with the exhilarating Gael Monfils and his win yesterday, following very disappointing news that just came out about a couple hours ago that unfortunately Gael will not be able to play his match against Holger Rune with a wrist injury. Very disappointing. But before we talk about that, 0-4 in the fifth set, Steve, did you have any doubt he was going to come back and win that match?
Well, not only love 4 in the fifth, but 30-40, about to lose his serve again, and the match is going to be out of reach. No, I mean, I'm glad he had that moment, even though it's led to a default, which is sad. But at least he got that. He was able to record that one exhilarating triumph, and hopefully, going forward, he's going to get in better and better shape. Hopefully the injury doesn't last too long.
Hope so. Yeah, that was some moment. And that's, there were so many things on social media. That's why you play. That's why you don't want to retire too early. Even if you go through a lot of injuries, which he has, you still always kind of seeking that moment. And what a moment he did have last night with the home crowd behind him.
And you know what, David, I've seen him there so many times over the years, and he's always been one of the game's most captivating players wherever he goes, but there's nothing like the atmosphere at Roland Garros when he's on court. Yeah. I saw him play Roger a few times, and it's just really he can do no wrong in their eyes, and they love him. And so this was unexpected, clearly unexpected, particularly when he got so far down in the fifth. So it's something he'll take with him despite the disappointment. And frankly, I never liked his chances against Holger Rune anyway, even if he'd been fresher, but at least he got the one win.
And hey, his wife, right? His wife, Lena Svitolina, she's got through 2 rounds. So she's in the third win. So yeah, it's really unfortunate about the default, but the pairing did pretty well, and Svitolina's still going. So she's not done yet. So we'll see how it goes. They're both parents of a baby now. So it was good to see them both do well.
Yes, and she's a different kind of player altogether. She's much more low key professional, someone who knew her way around the top 5-10 in the world, and she's kind of working her way back to that. She doesn't. You don't have the wild pendulum swinging results and emotions of her husband. And I don't mean that as a knock on him. I just mean has a totally different demeanor, and she's resurgent right now. So I'd love to see her. I'd love to see her make a showing, get deep into this draw.
Yeah, I would too. 2 other players that we've talked about, in a few episodes together. We always pair them together, right? As Sloane Stephens and Madison Keys. They're around the same era, both Americans, both when they're playing at the top of their games can beat anybody. But unfortunately, in their careers, there's been a little bit too much of up and down. And David, the last few years.
Sorry to interrupt you. The other reason we always link them together is they met in that U.S. Open final in 2017, Sloane winning very easily against a slightly hampered Madison Keys. But that was such a wonderful and inimitable moment for both of them, because they're good friends, and so they knew neither one was going to be devastated by the result. They could accept losing to the other, and they had a nice hug when it was over. And so that's the reason I always think of them together, and that's it's I think on this court, and they've met here in the French too, and when Sloane got to the finals. And so I feel like Sloane on the clay, though, by the way, is the better player in my view. I like Keys' game better for faster courts, and she's got a great serve. And Sloane, it's close to being her best surface. It's almost a draw between hard courts and clay.
I think the frustration that any fans may have with them is that they know how good both of them are when they're playing at the top of their games, that when they go through these slides in the past couple of years have been hard on both of them. It was kind of frustrating to watch. It's almost like we don't know which player we're going to see on the court. because again, we know how good they can be. And Sloane, as you kind of, as you stated, she likes to clay and she's had good results here. She made the final of the French just a few
Well,
years back.
That was a nice follow-up to winning the US Open the year before. And not only she the final, she was very close to beating Simona Halep. She took it into a third and she was very close. And she couldn't have given a much better account of herself. End of that year, lost to Simona in the WTA Championships final as well. So she was so good through that period, has never quite reached that level since, but she's always knocking on the door. And when she's playing well, she's one of the more appealing players in women's tennis because she does everything so well. And she's such a smooth ball striker and she's so strategic out there. I love to watch her when she's in the right frame of mind, which is what you were touching on. Right now, she's in the right frame of mind.
Correct. So Sloane is in the third round as we record this on Wednesday night. Madison's still in the second round. She plays tomorrow. Interesting first round match, and we've referred to him before, just not having a great spring. It's clear he's not healthy. You had Fabio Fognini. That's not who I'm referring to. Who I'm referring to is Felix Auger-Aliassime. Fognini, by the way, also won. So he beat FAA, and then Fognini won his second round match as well. So he's on a roll. Yeah. But Felix is just not. He just can't get healthy right now, Steve.
Can't get healthy, and he has no confidence in turn. Where they go hand in hand, they're intertwined. So I get it. I just hope. Maybe it's asking too much for him to be back at the top of his game by Wimbledon. That may be too soon, but I'm hoping that across the summer on the hard courts that he can start getting some good results at a Cincinnati or Canada, either one, and come into the US Open where he's a former semifinalist and really show us his best stuff again, because he's again one of the most charismatic and appealing players in tennis. He carries himself so well on the court. And he has the whole package. It's all there. So I hope that that's what I expect to happen, right? This has been a very difficult first half of 2023. Not what any of us expected, given how well Felix played at the end of last year.
I think once he gets healthy, he'll be back, to his normal stuff. He's too good not to. Such a great athlete, like you said, carries himself so well, and everybody loves him. So let's get him healthy. Let's get him back to playing top of the game. Another first round match that I was really intrigued to watch. It didn't disappoint as far as my view goes. Victoria Azarenka versus Bianca Andreescu. I like both players a lot. I loved the matchup, that it was intriguing. I didn't love that they had to play each other in the first round. Azarenka was up in that match 6-2, 3-1. And loses. She also had 15-40 when she was up 3-1. She was up 40-15, actually. Andreescu comes back and wins that match. It got dicey at that 5-4 in the last game there, but Bianca did hold on to win 6-4 in the third.
Yeah, but that's what you had to admire in Azarenka. Was 40-11, and the next thing you know, she's got it back to do. She's she's completely professional in my view of the way she competes. But I thought, to me, it was actually more important that for Andreescu to win that match. The loss would have been more devastating for her than for Vika for many reasons, because she's really trying to recapture the form that we saw from her back in 19. So I think that was a fitting result. I'm not worried about Azarenka recouping from the defeat and starting to play top of the line tennis again. But this was a moment that had to be seized. She had to meet that moment, Andreescu, and she did with flying colors.
Well said. I just wish it was a round of 16 match and not a first round match, which is unfortunate. But Jessie Pegula looks like her side of the draw. It's getting real nice for her, because Belinda Bencic lost, Maria Sakkari lost. Gosh, just 2 years ago, Sakkari had match points to get to the final. She's just fallen off, unfortunately. Jessie Pegula has a chance here, Steve, to go very, very far.
Yeah, and I think she's been in the quarters of 4 of the last 5 majors she played. Well, we know, listen, she's the consummate professional in women's tennis. And she now needs to take advantage of that draw. She's never one that takes any match for granted. And I don't think she will. And this is a big opportunity for her. And she's talked about how she feels like on the clay right now, she's playing better than she was a year ago. I find her outlook to be very encouraging because she's one of these people, when she does an interview, she tells you exactly what she thinks.
Yes.
She doesn't, there's no hiding anything. And so to hear her sound so optimistic tells me that she thinks she can go far in this tournament.
100%. Hey, we haven't talked about the biggest upset yet. We got to talk about it now. The 2 seed, the winner of the Masters 1000 in Rome right before this event, Daniil Medvedev, losing in 5 sets. Opponent, Thiago, had 47 forehand winners. Daniil only had 15. What happened to Mr. Medvedev?
He came up against a very explosive shot maker in the qualifier from Brazil, and whose last name is spelled W-I-L-D, but we don't pronounce it as Wild. But just so everybody knows who we're referring to, because I don't want to do an attempt to pronounce his whole name. But he was so bold, and Medvedev was quite analytical afterwards about how in the windy conditions and with the heavy balls, especially with the heavier balls, that you need to have a certain amount of wrist action. You got to be able to hit the ball big and with a lot of spin. And he says that's not him. He admits it. That's not him. He's sort of a flat ball hitter, and he's better in calmer conditions with lighter balls. And so maybe all that worked a little against him. On the other hand, the Brazilian won the first set and had 2 set points in the second set. It was on his racket to go up 2 sets to love. He missed a couple of forehands, which is his best shot. And one of them was, especially the first set point, was a pretty easy forehand off a return from Medvedev that was barely past the service line. And the next thing you know, Medvedev has stolen the set, and it's 1 set all. And then Medvedev wins the third 6-2. And I thought at that stage that was one of those classic cases of somebody having an opening and not being able to take advantage of it and not being able to get it out of his head. But the next thing you know, the Brazilian comes back and wins the last 2, 3, and 4. He broke Medvedev 3 times in the 5th set. Daniel kept breaking back. Twice he did break back, but finally the Brazilian got it done. And with a couple of forehand winners at the end, he was going for the lines, David. It was pretty phenomenal display. I mean, really daring shot making. And you mentioned the 47 winners. It's amazing that he didn't make 47 more unforced errors, given the risks that he was taking. So I think, and Medvedev was very funny about it. He basically said, look, he played great. But his attitude was, if he doesn't play like that in his next match, Medvedev was speaking of himself, was saying, I'm going to say, why did it have to happen to me? Meaning I had a hot day. And I'm afraid that's how it's going to play out. I could be wrong.
Well, that's why. No, I think it very well could, because that's why this guy's not top 20, 25.
Right. But what I mean is it would be nice to see him make the most of it and go on a run, but I don't expect it. And
of course,
it was but Medvedev is right in that he didn't stop fighting. It's not, he did seem to have control of the match when he went up 2 sets to 1, but he never stopped fighting. His attitude was good. He was a little bit beleaguered at moments, talking to his corner, a little frustrated here and there, but it wasn't the most emotionally destructive Daniel that we've seen from time to time. But in the end, he just got beaten by a better player and a bolder shot maker on the day. And it was actually exhilarating to watch.
And, and Chris Clary stated this on Twitter, and we all know this, but for the maybe the recreational tennis fans, it just shows again the depth in men's tennis. And, in Rome, right, we had a guy ranked 135 in the world beat Carlos Alcaraz. Now, again, Carlos was probably tired. He played a ton of tennis.
Right.
I'm just saying rankings, 135 over 2. And then the match we were just talking about, 172 over number 2. The level in the men's game and in the women's game, they're so good. I mean, we hear about the superstars, but the people ranked 100, 150, they're plenty good, believe me.
No, they are. And on a given day, David, you take somebody like the Brazilian. I mean, suppose Medvedev had played a guy ranked, say, missed the seeding cut, and he's ranked 47 in the world, and maybe Daniel beats him 3, 4, and 3. Because the guy doesn't play a great match, because Medvedev is more familiar with him, any number of reasons. But sometimes it's dangerous, as it was for Carlos, as you mentioned, in the last tournament. So, yeah, it's great depth, and nobody can afford to take any match for granted. That's the proof there. On the hand, what makes it so interesting is if Medvedev escapes, if he'd managed to get through it in 5, who's to say he wouldn't have put it behind him in a hurry and played it and used the confidence he had from Rome to go deep into this tournament. But
as we've seen so many times in tournaments, if you can get through that one hiccup, that one tough, that may be the toughest match you have throughout the entire tournament. So very well said.
He had a bad serving day. He had 14 or 15 double faults. It was the conditions weren't easy for him. And on the other hand, I as I say, I felt like he gave it his all, and he was not. I didn't feel like he really beat himself that much, and he just couldn't handle the conditions as well as his opponent. So you got to tip your hat to the guy who wins.
Hey, we're both big proponents of college tennis. I mean, this is pretty good stuff here, Steve. I'm gonna name a few on the women's side. Schneider from NC State, she took the team to the runner-up finals. They lost to North Carolina. Emma Navarro from Virginia. Peyton Stearns just won it from Texas last year. She beat Ostapenko today. Peyton's now in the 3rd round. You have 12 players, men and women's side, that have played college tennis that were in the singles 2nd round. And again, some can even go further. Peyton, like I just said, is already in the 3rd round. We've said it before, and we're saying it again, Steve. College tennis is a viable pathway to go to the pros now.
Yeah, it is. It is. And this is going to be like an advertisement for that now, right, with that players in the 2nd round. And what I find interesting is I think of college. I know they play on different surfaces and they have national championships. They have different events, but I think of it as predominantly a hard court game. And here are all these players doing well at Roland Garros on the clay, which shows how versatile they are. And that's makes it all the more encouraging. So my hope is that a bunch of them, let's see them go to the round of 16. Let's see something more than the 2nd round. But what a start.
And what a bonus, like you said, like it's an advertisement for college tennis. These college coaches love it because they're saying, look, come here, do what you need to do, move on to the pro tour, and you can have success. You just don't show them 1 or 2 examples anymore. You got a bunch of examples that you can show.
Yeah. No, it's terrific.
So hey, we're halfway through round 2, right? We got halfway and the 3rd round set up, the other half waiting to play tomorrow. 3rd round match, Steve. We got 2 guys that are just shot makers. Fans are gonna love it. I think we all know who's gonna win, and I think it's gonna be pretty straightforward. I want to hear your thoughts. Carlos Alcaraz versus Denis Shapovalov.
If this match was being played on the center court of Wimbledon, David, and where Shapovalov a couple of years ago was in the semis losing to Novak, I would give him a shot. I'd give him a chance with that left-handed serve and the explosive shot-making capabilities. I don't think clay is his best surface. Doesn't mean he can't make it interesting, absorbing. Maybe he steals a set. Carlos lost a set today to Taro Daniel, but then pulled away easily in the 3rd and 4th sets. So I can see Denis making competitive and interesting. I just don't see, as you said right off the bat, it's inconceivable to me that he can win 3 sets. Yeah. But because I just think Denis is better on hard and grass and indoors than he is on clay. But he also is the kind of player that gets inspired by playing a big name opponent, and it should bring out his best tennis, enough so to make it a really compelling match.
Right. And if he gets hot, if he gets on a hot streak during that match, watch out, because things
and that's why
ebb and flow.
Doesn't shock me a bit if he wins a set, and I guess I suppose in the best case scenario somehow takes it to a 5th. I just don't see how he wins that 3rd set. That in the end Carlos will be too tough mentally, and he'll withstand any of the brilliant blitzes that are being thrown at him but it'll be fun to watch, no doubt.
Another intriguing matchup, and he's been my kind of dark horse. Again, I've said it on a couple episodes now, not to win it, but to hopefully make a deep run. 3rd round match, Musetti plays Cam Norrie. Cam Norrie, always a tricky guy to play. Musetti's been playing really well as of late, but Cam is never an easy out on any surface.
No, that's probably going to be very hard fought. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Musetti and Cam went the distance. I believe either one, obviously. I mean, Carlos played Norrie a couple of times in finals on the clay when he started back this year after missing the Australian. He went to the
The
clay
winner of
first.
the Musetti Nori match will play the winner of
Right.
Carlos. And
Yeah. So assuming that Carlos beats Dennis, as we both think he will, I'm saying that looking ahead to that fourth round clash, I mean, either one poses a threat. Nori, we know because he split a couple of matches with Carlos earlier in the year, and they were good, hard fought finals. And Musetti has beaten Carlos too, and I feel like either one is a threat. Somehow, I feel like Musetti might scare him even a little bit more
on the clay for sure. I think Alcaraz would beat Nori easier on clay. Not that Alcaraz can't beat Musetti on clay in straight sets, he can, but I think Musetti can do a little bit more damage on a clay court to Alcaraz if he's playing well than Cam Nori can.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen Nori play him tough, so I don't underestimate him either on the clay. I just feel like Musetti is one of those guys that's such an emotional player, and and he can get the crowd behind him too. That's what would be so interesting if they were to meet in the fourth round. Carlos is immensely popular wherever he goes, and he's beguiling, and the crowds love him, and he's emotive, and he's never going to have crowds antagonistic toward him. But Musetti is one of these guys that can bring them around him and is not afraid to, with the gestures and the sort of imploring the crowd to get behind him. So I think atmospherically it would be a riveting clash.
Yeah, that little section, the Alcaraz versus Shapovalov and the Musetti versus Cam Nori, and then the winners clash. That's a fun little section there. The next couple days, it'll be fun to watch. Person we haven't talked about yet. He had a scare in the first set today, but then again, it gets into a tiebreaker and he's just locked down city. Is Novak Djokovic still in a collision course to play Carlos Alcaraz, not in the final, but in the semifinal? Give me your thoughts on Novak so far.
You know, he played the Hungarian Fusovic, and that's the match you're referring to today. And it was an 87-minute first set, hour and 27 minutes. Djokovic had a 3-love lead early and had a break point for 4-love that would have made life a lot easier. And then Fusovic really started playing great tennis in the windy conditions. And it's been
back up 5-3 in the first two.
Yeah, yes, he was. But what I'm saying is he had a chance for the second break at 3-love and didn't get it. And the next thing you know, he still gets to 5-2, but he was down 15-40. He was down successive service games, down 15-40, love 40, held them both to get to 5-2. It was a little tenuous, and then he didn't serve it out, and it went to 5-all, and eventually they go to the breaker. Novak won. He gave one of his typically professional performances in the breaker, which he won 7.2, despite one exchange that went 33 strokes.
He lost that one. He lost that point.
That's what I mean. That was one of the 2 points that he lost, and it was on a winner from Fusovic, and then the other point he lost was a backhand down the line winner from Fusovic. So 2 winners for his opponent. Djokovic wins all 7 other points, doesn't make an unforced error.
So good in tiebreakers. He locked down city in tiebreakers.
And he did the same thing in the first round too, where he won 7 points to 1 in the third set of his clash there to get into the second round. And yeah, but what I like about it is that he's still pretty aggressive. He started this tiebreaker off today with a backhand down the line winner that landed smack on the baseline. And so he's not afraid to go for it. He just won't do anything foolish. He won't make mistakes that are going to beat himself. And then even though Fusovic everybody talks on the tour, and he talks a lot about his conditioning himself, and he's extremely fit. Yes. But even he just looked physically and psychologically destroyed in the second set. And Djokovic blitzed through that 6-love and eventually won the third set 6-3. But I think it's going to a tiebreak in the third set of his first round match and going to a tiebreak again in the first set today. Those kind of tests have been helpful to him. He hasn't lost a set into the third round. And now he'll play Davidovich Fokina, who of course beat him in Monte Carlo last year on a pretty bad day for Novak, and terrific stuff from the Spaniard. And this time around, I think Djokovic, he's possibly could lose a set. I don't see it going beyond that, though. I think he's in good form.
And we talked about what you just said, the good form, on a previous episode about, the preparation hasn't been the greatest for Novak, but we said he can play himself in. He's won these first 2 rounds. If he beats another good player like this, 3 or 4 sets, all that prep goes out the window, Steve. He's now playing his way into the tournament and he's ready to roll.
Yeah, and I think so. I think so. And the main thing is that my biggest concern was the physical side, because he wasn't physically right in those tournaments, and he didn't dwell on that too much. He didn't talk about it too much, but we saw that elbow sleeve coming on and off. There were things that were obvious. He took a painkiller during his loss to Holger Rune in Rome. There were clearly things not right physically. But then he did say prior to his first round here, physically, I'm feeling fine. And then it's showing in these matches. So yes, he can definitely play. And I like the idea of these sort of things stepping up. Davidovich Fokina next in the third round. Then he might play Hurkacz possibly in the 16s. Then he might play Khachanov or Rublev in the quarters. These are all matches he should win, but players that can push him a little bit more each time, so that by the time he got to Carlos in the penultimate round, he should be playing his best tennis and ready for that occasion, win or lose, to give himself a chance to beat the Spaniard.
And that's what we were hoping when we were talking about this on last episode. Okay. Still, again, we're not even close to halfway done with the tournament, so still a ton of tennis left to be played. We'll do this again. We're not sure exactly which day. We want to try to fit it in on a good time where certain matches have been played. So Steve and I are going to continue to be flexible when we record. But again, we definitely will do another one before this tournament ends. We'll do it some point early next week. Anything else you want to touch on before we sign off?
No, I think we sort of hit the key notes here. And I'm really happy, David. Yes, there's been too much wind. I feel sorry for the players and having to deal with it. Like there was average 12-mile-an-hour winds during the Djokovic match, and they said gusts up to 21, and you could see it. You could see the clay blowing in their faces. Djokovic getting into his eyes when he wears contacts, putting drops in his eyes. Vucevic putting his shirt up to his eyes to try to keep the clay out. So you really sympathize with the players having to deal with that. But at least we haven't had, as is the case in prior Roland Garros editions, rain. So that it's so crucial to get through these first two rounds without it, to keep on schedule so that the players get the days off that they deserve. So I think they'd rather have to confront the wind than to deal with sitting around waiting for the rain to stop. So I'm happy that things are on course that way. So far, so good.
And I'll leave you with this. I know we talked about Pegula, and we hope she makes a very deep run in this slam. But anything that can stop the trio that we always talk of on the women's side, Swiatek, Rybakina, and Sabalenka. Anything, and it looks that they won't be there at the very end?
Well, listen, I'd love for Jess Pegula to prove us wrong, but looking at it strictly analytically, no, I don't see anything changing that pattern. Sabalenka has not been at her very best so far, but I think she's going to get better. And we'll see what goes on with Iga. But again, I expect her to build toward peak form. And no, I think it's still going to ultimately come down to that trio.
Well, stay tuned, tennis fans. We're only on the first Wednesday night. We got a week and a half left. So much tennis in store, so much great tennis we're going to see. Steve, you and I will be back at it next week. Can't wait to do it. And we'll see where we're getting into the latter stages of the tournament. And we'll do this all again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Enjoyed it.